Well, it may just be time to introduce pornography into the Say Goodbye and Imagine podcast because I just finished an interview with Eric Zuzack, who is a coach who helps men overcome pornography. And it was a fascinating conversation because I had no idea the similarities about how people become enslaved to something like that, and alcohol, lots of similarities, and also similarities in the methodologies to healing. Certainly a lot of differences as well. But we're gonna just take a really great look at what's going on in the world. I mean, some powerful things came across to me in this interview, like the fact that I had never really considered the fact that sex traffickers are using children for these things, or the fact that there's such a thing as a pornography hangover, just like an alcohol hangover, or the fact that we have habit buddies, bad habit buddies. We talked about a few good habit buddies, but for instance, with alcohol, it was salami and cheese for me, and for Eric, it was wine and some other kind of food. I think if you're a parent in today's world, it's pretty important that you pay attention to this topic because kids are getting access to this stuff at 7 years old. I can gratefully say I'm glad I'm not parenting young children today. I also share a very little known secret about my last name, Forte. So join me on this episode of the Say Goodbye and Imagine podcast. Hey, Eric, welcome to the show. I am super excited to talk to you about this subject. I always anticipated that the talks on this particular podcast would venture out into other areas, problematic areas of addiction, and pornography is surely one of those. And my understanding is it's becoming a bigger and bigger problem. And based on our conversations kind of pre this interview, a lot of mechanisms for healing are very similar. And I'm excited to dive in and talk to you about it. So welcome.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Eric, I just want to start with, well, let's just start with why powerful Eric? Because we had this conversation again in a pre-interview, and people can jump to conclusions, but there's actually such a compassionate story behind powerful Eric, and I'd love for you to share that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, people do jump to conclusions on social media that see powerful Eric and they leave me comments like, are you an egomaniac or,
Right, right.
as you know, it is far from being an egomaniac. It's quite the opposite. How powerful Eric came to be is, I was addicted to pornography and I wanted help. And I sought help. And the traditional model is that you go to a regular therapist, you are put on antidepressants, and you go to 12-step meetings. And basically, they took the model that was for drugs and alcohol and just moved it over to porn and sex, thinking that, well, it's basically the same thing. And there's a ton of similarities, but there's also a ton of differences. And so, anyway, I had been going to all these different recovery programs that use what's called the disease-based model of addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and a part of that is in the beginning of these meetings, you say, you'd introduce yourself this way. Hi, I'm Eric. I'm a sexaholic. I'm powerless over porn. It's been about X amount of days since I've viewed pornography, and then you would describe some of your worst behaviors. And
I have so many comments right, just right there, but go ahead.
yeah, again, I wanted to get better, and I found myself actually getting worse. And I was identifying, like when I had brushed my teeth, for example, at night, I was brushing the teeth of a porn addict, because I'm going to the meetings and I'm a sexologist, I'm a porn addict. That's me for life. And so anyway, I was getting worse. And so I was searching, and I found this little app, happened to use the science of mindfulness to break addictions. And just on a whim, I thought, I've been saying I'm powerless over this for actually almost coming up on a couple of decades. And this has not been working. So just on a whim, I thought I'm going to make my login, my screen name as Powerful Eric. And in that moment, pitiful, powerless, porn addicted Eric died, and Powerful Eric was born. So I don't call myself Powerful Eric out of ego. It's out of having called myself a piece of poo and powerless for decades. And God don't make no junk. Like God
Right.
makes no junk.
I love it. I love
And
it.
I was calling myself poo, we'll just say.
Yeah. Let me just tell you that this is something I don't think I've ever revealed to anybody. But after I went through a divorce, I was changing my name and I didn't want to change it back to my maiden name. So I made up my new name, Forte, because I'm Italian and Forte in Italian means strong. So,
This is meant to be.
is that not crazy?
That is crazy, Roseanne. That is so awesome. I love that. This podcast was destined to happen.
I know. Is that not crazy? Obviously my family knows that, but I did not want to go back to my maiden name. It was so hard. And I felt like I climbed out of an abyss and a hole, and Forte sounded strong. I'm strong. I am strong.
Are strong. I am strong. The listeners are strong, but
They need
often
to
we're
change
told
the narrative.
otherwise.
Yeah.
We're told otherwise, that you're weak, that you're powerless, you can't handle it. But
Yeah.
with God,
I
all
just
things are possible. With God, all things are possible.
I just want to share before we get into just my response to what you said. It pains me. It does. It pains me because I know that so many people have been healed by those programs, right? And I don't want to poo-poo that kind of thing. I'm trying to get out of my windows here that I hear beeping. But the problem is, for as many people they're helping, they're hurting by a factor of 10 or more people.
Yeah.
And just for alcohol, only 8%, statistically, only 8% are reaching out to help. And if you assume all 8% are going to a 12-step, the 12-step is only successful, and according to AA, 25% of the time. So I haven't done the math, but 25% of 8 is 2. So that means 98% of the population with a problem is not being helped. And this is why we're talking, right? It's a new approach. God doesn't make junk. He has a plan, he has a purpose, and we're creating a different narrative about excitement about who we can be created to be if we can get rid of this thing that's holding us back. So let's start. Let's dive in. I'm
Yeah.
excited.
So
Just for people that don't understand, and including me, I don't have a lot of experience with it except for what I see. What is a pornography addiction? And then part two is, how does it differ from other types of addiction?
Yeah. Well, let me back up just a little bit on the 12 step real quick. So first
I
of
know
all,
we can.
so thank God that Bill Wilson, started the 12 steps. They've helped millions of people around the globe. Thank God,
Bill and Bob, millions of people saved. Yeah.
yeah. And that program was made in the 1930s.
Yeah, that's really the problem. They took what
So,
they knew that at that point.
so that we'll call that the technology. That was the technology that was available at the time, and that was the best that was available. However, there's a new world out there with all different types of modalities and healing methods that work. And so thank God for that program. And there needs to be a step 13 now. There needs to be a step 13. So
I have 12 core concepts instead.
there you go. 12 core concepts.
As
Well,
an alternative, yeah, yeah.
yes.
So,
Thank you. Thank you.
all right. So, in
So,
terms of a definition of pornography, let's just start
yeah.
there.
So, well, let's start with
Or
just
of pornography addiction.
yeah.
Yeah.
So an addiction, if it is, I give a really super simplified definition, is that it is harming your life. Like there's people that can take drinks of alcohol and they're totally fine. There's other people that take a couple drinks of alcohol and they can't stop. And same thing with pornography. There's some people that might look at it here and there and they're fine, but there's other people that go and they can't stop. And so the question is, how is it affecting your life? Now, some people ask, how do you know if you're addicted to pornography? How do you know? Well, this is my response. If you're having to ask that question,
Mhm.
then there you go. Like if you're having to think, gosh, I wonder if I'm addicted to pornography. The answer is very obvious. If you're having
That's
to ask that question,
just so you know, we're going to look for similarities in this podcast, but that's the exact same answer I give for alcohol. If you're asking the question, chances are you're at the beginning of a problem
yeah,
or the middle of a problem.
yeah, yeah.
And basically, the definition of any addicting behavior is continuing to do something despite your desire, regardless of the consequences, and
Yeah,
despite your desire to do something different. So it's starting to control you as opposed to you controlling it. And
yeah,
that's what we're going to address.
exactly. Despite the consequences, I'm going to continue to do this, despite the effect that it's having on my marriage, despite the effect that it's having on my health, my work, my sleep.
Well,
That's a big one.
okay, again, this is you just recited my enrollment conversation. How's it affecting your mental health? How's it affecting your physical health? How is it affecting your relationships? Is it affecting you financially in a negative? And is it affecting your productivity? And so when you say sleep, that goes into the bucket of physical health.
Yeah. I call it having a porn hangover because a lot of guys will use porn before bed. And so what will happen is they'll be like, oh, I'm just going to get on here for a little bit. Well, anyway, time goes on and it's 3 a.m. It's like, oh my gosh, it's 3 a.m. and I have to get up and go to work. And so you end up having this porn hangover the next day because you have been sleep deprived and you literally gave away your life force energy that night. Like you're literally, that sexual energy is life or is life-giving energy. That's how
Wow, I
people
have
go
never.
into the world. So you gave up your sleep, you gave up your life, life essence, life force energy, and then you add on top of that mountains and heaps of shame and guilt, and you have a poor name.
Thank you. That was pretty powerful. I had never really contemplated it that way. How do you know, because I'm in it's almost like we're talking about the same thing, but I know it's not. So I'm going to ask you, first of all, how do substances interact with this problem? And then I know that there are some differences related to how to solve for it, but let's just focus on how the interaction of substances work with
So
addiction.
what I call it is habit buddies. So bad habits have bad habit buddies, and good habits have good habit buddies.
Oh,
So so a couple of my bad habit buddies with porn was junk food and alcohol. So this is how it would go. I would at the time go out with friends, say on a Saturday night, drink to excess, knowing that, oh, this is going to loosen me up because later then I'm going to get into porn and get into some really weird stuff, because I'm taking this alcohol, the stuff that and then after binging on the pornography, I'm hungry. So then I go get fast food. That it's this these buddies have, the porn has these bad habits that go along with it. So there's other drugs, so to say. Some people, they use, drugs. For me, it was alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like I said, the other buddy, bad habit buddy, was binging on fast food.
Yep. For me, it was salami and cheese. I'd always know what I ate by looking at the wrappers or the plate on the coffee table.
Yeah.
Because I usually would have some form of blackout and go to bed not remembering and then wake up and go, oh my gosh. So it's not only the alcohol I'm dealing with, it's the other things I was putting
Yeah.
into my body.
This was a sign that I was improving some, because my habit buddies started to subside, and that, I had stopped using alcohol with the porn. And then,
Did that happen at the same time or how did that happen?
well, this was a process. It wasn't necessarily even conscious, but I'm like, oh, I didn't use alcohol with the porn. And after I was done, I wasn't binging on fast food. Like, I may have still had food afterwards, but it was, a better quality of food. So it was like, oh, maybe.
So that's interesting. You have the habit buddies and you were focused on controlling one of the easier ones for you to control first to get to the most difficult one. Love that.
Yeah. And
Right.
also, if I could point out that, there's bad habit buddies, but there's also good habit buddies. And what started happening, and this was conscious by design, was, getting into good physical shape. And so what would happen is I would go and work out, and the old Eric would want to go have, junk, but powerful Eric wanted to have some good food, actually healthy food. So by exercising that good habit, I had a good habit buddy of eating well, eating good food.
I love it. And that's what it's always about. It's about building good habits. So that is a difference because the alcohol problem for people is so deeply ingrained, at least for the people that I'm helping, is they usually transfer something to something like food or sugar.
Mhm.
And because I want them to focus on alcohol or the substance, I'm like, don't worry about it over the short term because it's,
Well, they give candy away at the AA meetings.
oh yeah, and donuts are always
Yeah.
present everywhere, you know. So yeah, because quitting two addictions, and you're not saying you did it all at once, right?
No.
You're just doing one at a time. I have a friend and a coach who quit alcohol and then she had to quit cigarettes. I ended up quitting cigarettes first 15, 17 years ago, and then I quit alcohol. So it's whatever one is probably, I don't know how you chose, but maybe you chose to get rid of the alcohol and the food to motivate you to move in the right direction for the pornography, correct?
So cigarettes, I believe that the day is going to come when a porn is going to be viewed like cigarettes, meaning everybody will know that, like, that's not good for your mental health. That's not good for your physical health.
Yeah.
Like, people just know, like, yeah, it's easily accessible. You can do it, but why would you want to take a puff on that cigarette knowing that it's going to take X amount of, days?
Years of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, my father probably died 10 years too early because of cigarette smoking.
Right.
And
But
yeah,
I really think the day will come where people will be like, well, yeah, you can use pornography, but it's going to destroy your self-image. has all
Well,
these negative things that go.
let's just talk. I have been hearing some crazy, 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 crazy numbers about people who use pornography and are getting addicted. What can you give me any statistics around pornography addiction in today's society?
Yeah,
Because I can hardly believe the numbers that people throw out.
yeah. Well, just for the internet, over 30% of the websites out there are porn websites. That is
What?
that's a massive number. When you think of how many websites are out there, if it's 30%, that's a crazy number.
Where does that statistic come from?
I'm not sure how it was compiled, but that's pretty well
What?
known.
Pretty standard. That is shocking. And then how about any statistics? I've heard as high as 67% or 75% of men. And by the way, this is not only a man thing, there's women involved in
Sure.
pornography too.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, some of the other statistics are on divorce and kids. Uh, Over 50% of, so this, I can tell you where this, I can't stay, statistics that comes from is from a divorce lawyer association. And they said at the time, and this statistic's actually pretty old now, it's probably gone up, I would imagine, since they cited out of all the divorces, over over 50% of the divorces either cited as pornography being the reason for the divorce or at least a contributing factor. So they're not saying that 50% of the divorces are all from pornography, but they're saying it was at least a contributing factor in the divorce.
Well, let's talk about that. How do people get involved with pornography? Because I would have to believe it starts with a perceived problem in a relationship, although I'm sure there's singles out there that are people that aren't committed. Like, how are people getting involved in pornography? I'm sure some men will say, well, my wife isn't giving me anything, or, and I had to, or, yeah, what are the reasons?
I would say that is not the reason.
Okay.
Back to childhood, I found pornography at a young age. This is before the internet. And this is kind of a sad statement, really. But when I was a kid, if I found a Playboy magazine, I thought I really had something, like I got a Playboy. But now, well, for one, they don't even make it's only online. But nowadays, pornography is so hardcore that Playboy is almost like, I mean, it's so soft compared to what's out there. It's like it wouldn't even be picked up, So that's a really sad thing to say. But my point, though, is that it starts usually very young. The challenge that the kids have these days that they grow up with high-speed internet porn, a world selection of pornography, of hardcore pornography. And so it starts real young. Either a kid will stumble across it accidentally, or a friend will show it to them, or they'll seek it out for themselves. But I tell parents, like, they think, oh, my little Johnny would never view pornography. Okay, let's say that's true. Maybe he wouldn't. But I can guarantee you one of his friends is going to show it to him. Or
Mhm.
I can guarantee you he's going to stumble across it on the internet. A colleague of mine, her and her granddaughter were doing some type of project that they were using Google for. They put in a really innocent search term. I'm not going to say what it is, but it was just a very innocent search term. And it came up with porn. Well, like right her with her granddaughter right there in front of her. She's like, whoa, like, they are going to see it. They are going to see it. And so you need to have that conversation now rather than later because
Like Google could be a little involved in this. Is pornography illegal? It must be a legal thing if 30% of websites are operating there, right?
well, you've opened up a big can of worms that would be a subject for an entirely a whole subject in itself for another podcast, and that is big tech's role in this. And the answer, just in a nutshell, Google financially has everything to gain by keeping porn alive and well. I'll just put it that way.
Hmm. Very, very sad. Yeah, because I remember, I don't know when, it was over a decade ago. Somehow I did some kind of innocent search and I was like, oh, like, and I don't remember how I got rid of it, but it was crazy that, yeah.
But speaking of kids, this is another statistic that's disturbing. So at the time this was done, the average age that a child would view porn was 11, but I
Mm.
understand it's gone down since then. And I actually have, believe it or not, I have children reach out to me for help to overcome porn addiction. Now, I don't, to be clear, I don't coach children. I do have a great person I send them to that will take care of them if they need help. But it's disturbing. Like a child reaching out for help because they can't stop viewing porn. You know, it hijacks a part of the brain, a natural, normal part of the brain that's not normally stimulated at that age.
Well,
And
and that's exactly what they say about substances, that if you start under a certain age, 15, then your likelihood of being addicted, well, guess what I did, 13. And it's that, woo, that dopamine hit that as a child, you're supposed to be experiencing life's other pleasures with dopamine. And then and kids are curious. And so they entertain it, entertain it, entertain it. I was just kind of at an age where you know this, kids start thinking their parents are stupid and they know better.
yeah.
And so they're going to go do what feels good. And there you go. The beginnings of a neural pathway have started to
Oh
impact.
boy, the neural pathway for porn addiction is like a 5-lane highway going one way and 5 ways going the other. It's
Yeah,
a
let's,
highway.
well, maybe that's where we talk about the differences between substances and a pornography addiction.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I want to throw in with the kids thing real quick, there's a great book called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. It's intended for toddlers. I've used it with both my boys. It's a great book. It's a pornography prevention book. And believe it or not, my boys love the book. It's done really well. And there's also a Good Pictures, Bad Pictures Junior, which is for kids that are a little older. So I highly recommend both those books if you have kids.
Praise
But
God. I mean, praise God that people are creating these things. And that's what I'm angry about, is that nobody told me, nobody warned me. And if you want to drink or do drug, you know what I mean, you do you. But I just want to tell you that it's an addictive substance. And if
uh,
you're not careful, it'll get you. And unfortunately, it's an invisible line you cross. Nobody says, oh, there it is, so you can back off. You just go into it and you have no idea where it shows up. Yeah.
and I really appreciate what you're saying. Like no one told me. And like, and far as the parents go too, like no one told me how bad this is. This is it. I'm telling you now, like red alert, all hands on deck. This is a epidemic. There's a governor of, I forget what state, that declared this a health emergency. Like the pornography addiction is a huge thing. I if you have kids and they have unfiltered devices, and especially if they're coming of age, they're think of this. If you're a little kid or a young boy, or for example, and you have some curiosity, where's the first place you're going to go? Are you going to go to and talk to mom and dad about it? No, you're going to go to Google. You're going to go to Google.
Especially they're curious at those young ages about their sexual interests.
Of
It's
course.
where men or boys are just peaked and ay, ay, ay. And I thought substances were a problem.
Yeah, you
Um,
I always say you can with kids, you can proactively address this now. give them those books, for example, or have those conversations, which should be an ongoing conversation, not just a one, you know,
Right.
one talk. But you can either proactively address it now, or you can reactively address it later when it comes knocking at your door, because it will.
That's the same as alcohol. You think it's a certain type of person, but it's every person who uses it for any person. There's no socioeconomic, you know, division who is trying to manage pain and stress in their life and decides to use a substance or a behavior to solve for that
Right.
is going to get addicted to it. It's just, that's the science.
You,
So,
you
go ahead.
difference between the two as far as like addiction wise. There's a big difference. So for one, there is a lot of similarities. Like there's a ton of similarities between a porn, sex addiction, and alcohol, drug addiction. There's a lot of similarities. But here's where the big difference lies is that, and I'm not saying this to be ignorant, forgive me. So when I leave the house, I don't have to bring alcohol with me. But when I leave the house, I bring my genitals wherever I go.
Mm-hmm.
So that is always, that's always there. You can't run away from your sexuality. Food is a great example. So you may be eating a bunch of junk food, but you can stop eating the junk food and start eating some healthy food and not eating as much. Same thing with like with sex. You can use it healthfully. Like you don't want to rid your life of food, right? Like I'm never gonna eat.
Yeah, you can't rid your life of food, which is
And
why it makes it hard for food control too, or a food addiction.
yeah, I agree. I agree. But the thing with sex too is depending on who you are, you don't necessarily want to like, okay, I'm never going to have sex ever again for the rest of my life, ever. You know, it's like, well, what about integrating it in a healthy way?
Yeah, and I have a coach, a male coach, who has struggled with that as well. But here's what he says. He says there's a difference between pornographic sex and making love. And is that part of the difference that you're teaching people when they heal is to recognize those differences? Because one is not of God and it's not serving you, it's not helping you. We haven't discussed how it creates the problems it creates in relationships, but I can only imagine. And one is created by God to be beautiful and a great experience to which you don't have a hangover from. And if you do have a hangover, it's a good hangover, right? So is that part of the process that you
Well, absolutely, yes. I mean, I like to say, well, from my experience, like using pornography is really something that is really just focused on your genitals, really. Whereas when you're making love, like when I'm making love to my wife, that is like a whole body, a whole person experience. So it's totally different, really. So I don't know if that answers your
so
question.
there is an abstinence of one type of thing, I guess. But then yeah, you do. I would say it's probably more closely associated with food
Yeah,
because
definitely.
you have to eat, you have to make love, you have to use your body for in this thing.
Yeah.
And so it becomes a controlled behavior. So let me ask you about what happens in a relationship when you kind of cross the line with a porn problem and your wife.
Well, I tell you, virtually all the men that reach out to me for help have come to that point because their wife has given them an ultimatum. It's either me or the porn that's got to go. And they're either already kicked out of their house or their marriage is on the brink of divorce. And that's almost always how a man approaches me. It's like, I, I need help. I want to stop. I can't stop. My marriage is in major jeopardy, or I'm already kicked out of the house. And it destroyed, well, stat that I gave you from the divorce attorneys, you know, over 50% of the cases of divorce cite at least pornography as a contributing factor. So it ain't helping it. Like, you know, people talk about, oh, I just use porn in the bedroom to spice things up. Okay, well, let's say you're in a healthy marriage and you're using porn in the bedroom to spice things up. So to say. Let's say that's true. And let's say you are using health pornography in a quote unquote healthy way. Well, okay. Well, if it's healthy for you, then what about the people on the other side of the camera that are making the pornography, that have been sex trafficked into that situation to make this homemade looking porn, which there's porn that's looks like it's like the neighbor made it, but it's actually the big professionals that are doing make it look like it's homemade porn. Not to say that the homemade porn isn't out there, but my point being is like, okay, so if it's healthy for me, is it healthy for that other person on the other side of the screen?
Well, is
That
it healthy for your partner? Or are you forcing her to do that? Yeah.
well, yeah. I mean, well, of course that too. But my point is that if it were possible to use porn in a healthy way, what about the people that are making it? Is it healthy for them? Is it healthy for that woman that has been purposely, they got her addicted to drugs?
I don't see it's God honoring in any way, shape, or form. Yeah.
Exactly,
No.
exactly.
But what is happening with the marriage? Are you less interested in having sex with your wife, or is that what happens? Or you're not going to do it without this add-on? Is that where it goes?
It's both. It's both. But primarily it's, well, I don't feel like asking my wife tonight. She might turn me down. So I'll just go to porn. It won't turn me down ever.
Oh,
And so it becomes a cycle. And then if, it's just
and then
also this
get
works.
caught eventually. Is that how the men get? Is that how the wives find out?
Yeah, exactly. But this also applies to single guys.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is what I mean. So a guy is going out on a Saturday night with some friends, and there's an attractive woman that he would like to approach. But in this, maybe his subconscious mind is thinking, well, I could ask her and avoid getting rejected. When why bother doing that? I can just go home and use porn. So you will not go out. Maybe you don't even go to the,
Wow. Yeah.
maybe you don't even go out with the friends. Maybe it's like, you know what? I'm just gonna stay in tonight. I'm just gonna stay in tonight. I'll have my fun with the porn. So I'm
That's
not.
exactly the same as alcohol and substances. I think your world gets smaller and smaller. You take less risks. You're just happy to be alone by yourself.
You take less risk. You take less risk. Why take the risk of approaching that beautiful woman when there's this beautiful woman on porn that I can go home to?
Okay. Wow. And porn costs money, I assume. People are in the business. How do kids afford it? How do they reel kids into this?
Well, the kids part is really disturbing, but in essence, it's free. Like it's free. They get you hooked just like the drug
Dealers.
dealer would do. Oh, hey, I'm your friend. Let me here, have this porn, have this for free. The first several are on me. And then once you're hooked, then they got you, and then you'll start to pay for it. Then you start to pay for it.
And what can somebody, because one of my conversations with people, especially if they're trying to coach or considering coaching, how much are you spending? And people can be spending what, $500 a month or or
Oh,
more
it's a lot
on
more than that.
alcohol.
There's a client of mine who went through the process, and he's all good now. But at the beginning, he had racked up over $40,000 worth of credit card and all that. Yeah. And how he did it, the reason he had accumulated so much is there's also like live, you could, like you can interact with people live.
Oh,
So he's interacting with these women, and these women were just draining him dry from with his,
So
you know,
it's like hiring a prostitute, but
exactly.
it's a virtual prostitute.
Yeah, and by the way, a person in pornography is not really an actress or an actor. They're they're prostitutes. They're paid to have sex on camera.
Good point. Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about healing.
Let's.
What are the what are the methodologies? And I think we very much use the same. It's a different addiction. It's different requirements, but a lot of the principles are the same. Do you want to talk about how you help? Well, you're helping men, but I know there's women out there that have the, would you see a woman if she was having a problem, or is that outside the
I
scope?
have a person that will take care of the ladies.
Okay.
Her name is Beth. She's awesome. She also takes care of the spouse. So, for example, if I get I'm helping a man and he's married, so I also have Beth then help
Oh, that's wonderful. That's
because
beautiful.
because even though the man's getting the help he needs, the woman is kind of left there like, what do I do? So Beth takes care of the ladies. But I digress from your point. You had asked a question. So the thing that I would like to focus on here is something that I'm unaware of any addiction recovery program does. And that is identity change. And that is that 13th step. And that there needs to be a point that comes where you say, you start, for example, when you're going to a 12-step meeting, I highly recommend this. If you're going to a 12-step meeting, to start introducing yourself as, hi, I'm Eric. I'm a recovering, whatever it might happen to be. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I'm a recovering sexaholic. That word recovering is really important because if you're just saying, I am a alcoholic,
Mhm.
then I that's then you start to identify with it. And so I stopped brushing the teeth of a sex and porn addict anymore. And I started brushing the teeth of powerful Eric. You know, that was the past. The past does not equal the future. The past does not equal the future.
Amen. Amen.
So identity change, that is the thing that I teach now. There's a lot of work that we do before we get to that point. That's way further down the line. First, we have to remove all the muck. And there's a story I like to illustrate that illustrates the work I do. Now, the story happens to be about a statue of a Buddha, but I'm going to use it as a statue of Jesus Christ. So there was a giant statue made of Christ. And I'm changing the story a little bit
Yeah,
for
I know. And I know the story. I've used it. I'm a positive intelligence coach, and they use that there too. So I appreciate the story. It's a story of a statue, and so I appreciate
anyway, there's a statue. It's a golden Christ, and these priests learn an invading army is coming, so they want to hide it, but it's too big to move, so they cover it in clay and dirt, and their plan does work. The invading army does come, but unfortunately, they kill all the priests that know that it's there. So it literally sits there for like 200 years with no one knowing it's there. And there's a new group of priests there, and they're outside on a sunshiny day praying, and they notice a glimmer of light, a crack, and they find this gold, and they unearth this giant golden Christ. And that's the analogy for us. We have the trials and challenges of life that, we're God don't make no junk. We're all gold, but we get
it.
covered in muck and all this. And
Well, we change our identity based on the world instead of who God created us to be, which is pure value. And like you said, in the statue, it's gold. But
so,
yeah,
but the first part though is before we start polishing the gold, we got to remove all the muck. We got to remove all the dirt and all the clay. And that's the first part. And there's a lot of work. But then once we've done that, then we start polishing the gold. And that's where the identity change comes in. I actually have, and the guys love this. Every single guy I've done this with loves this. I have them come up with a Christed name, a superhero name, a power name, and I
Uh-huh.
with something different. And it's not like we go down the street and like I don't introduce myself
That's
as "Hi,
powerful.
I'm powerful Eric. But when I'm brushing the teeth, I am brushing the teeth of powerful Eric. And so guys love this process, and there's a whole huge thing that goes along with that name, this process of identity change.
Yeah, you have to understand you're not who, well, would I say these thoughts that you're not your thoughts. Because,
Yes, I
you
love
know,
that. You're not your thoughts.
yeah, you
And
were created,
thoughts are often wrong.
right? Well, yes, unless they're made obedient to the word of God, I believe that the enemy always wants to redirect you to gunk and a false identity. I mean, the thing that I used to say over and over again, I am not lovable. God is done with me. I'm not lovable. I'm a piece of poo. Yeah, like you say. And
Here's an affirmation for the audience. Every day and every hour, God is transforming my pain into power. Every day and every hour, God is transforming my pain into power. Because if he's put something before your past, seemingly negative, it's there for a reason. It's there for you to grow.
yeah, yeah, I agree. God uses it's Romans 8:28 that God uses everything um, for the good of those who love him. And that's how I feel like I am here today, is through that decades of pain and suffering, through some experiences. And, I'm just grateful that I can use that for a great purpose. And it sounds like you're doing the same too. And what comes after an identity shift? Are there any key factors that you need to focus on, especially as it relates to long-term healing? And we have to use that word recovery because we're in the recovery business, but I believe we can be healed by creating
Yeah,
new
I love
neurological pathways and new ways of being and new goals and new reflections. We are healed by the power of Jesus.
I
Uh,
love the same
yeah. And
because I've never told a soul this. I've never told a soul this. Is just always in my mind. When I almost hate to say it, but it's true. When I come across something and a person says they're in recovery, I'm almost like, oh jeez. Like,
yeah, won't you ever be recovered?
yeah, it's like, yeah. It's like, oh, I'm in recovery. I'm like, okay, I know the minds, I know what you mean. But yeah,
Well,
I totally
they
agree with
say
you.
50
Totally.
year. I've been 50 years in recovery. And I did an interview with Dr. David Jenkins, and he is a clinical psychologist at Liberty University. And he said, what they don't realize is Bill and Bob in the original book said, we are a bunch of alcoholics that have been healed or that have recovered.
Mhm.
It's past tense. And I think while well-meaning, it instills fear of, I think people live in fear of being tempted into there. But when you use this powerful, strong person made in the image of God, you get to choose a path and you are empowered to choose a better path because you know where that one leads, right? So,
I love everything you're saying. And especially in the first step, it says were powerless. We were powerless. It uses past tense. We were powerless.
now
But
you're powerful.
I can guarantee you in 99.9% of the recovery meetings you go to, they interpret it as you are powerless. That's how it's interpreted. I challenge anyone to prove me otherwise, prove otherwise.
Yeah, interesting. I love that. Yeah, well, Amen. Amen. Anything else you want to add that maybe I missed about? I mean, I'm trying to summarize similarities for sure. One that, substances and what did you call them? Co-occurring habits or fr
Habit buddy,
buddies? What is it?
habit buddies.
Habit buddies. That substances and pornography can be habit buddies. Um, these things can originate at a very young age, which is very heartbreaking to me. Definitely gonna send a copy of this episode to my kids who are adults, but I want to make sure they're safe. Um, a what else? That understanding that you have thoughts that are inaccurate about yourself, that you have value, and that value will empower you to take control of a different person, of a different vision. Yeah.
I like what you said. We have thoughts about ourselves that are inaccurate.
Yeah.
Truer words could be said. We have thoughts about ourselves that are inaccurate. God don't make no junk. We are
Hmm.
we're beyond gold. And you had asked like what are some things that I'd like to leave you with. The thing that the direction this is all going for me, the sex trafficking part of it, really like when I got into this, I didn't realize how far down this rabbit hole goes. It seemingly has no bottom of depravity. And to give you a little sample, I have a person now that's a friend of mine who grew up, her father was in a satanic cult, and I'll just say they used her for things. So like the level of depravity that this goes to has no bottom. Like you wouldn't believe it's unspeakable things. I'm not going to say them on this podcast. Um, so I guess my point is sex trafficking. There's, whether you believe it or not, there's sex trafficking going on right in your little community. Oftentimes it is family members or family friends that will just say pimp out your child for big, big money. I live in St. Louis, Missouri. It's alive and well here in St. Louis. So there's an organization called Our. It's the Underground Railroad. So a tremendous man. They made a movie about him. It's a sex trafficking movie. They'll come to me when the movie came out. It'll come to me. The newest Indiana Jones movie came out, and this movie beat Indiana Jones in the box office,
Wow.
being in less theaters as Indiana Jones. It's about sex trafficking. The guy that played the main character in The Passion of the Christ, that actor plays the lead in this movie. But anyway, this Underground Railroad Association helps uh, prevent sex trafficking. That's the area that I'm going. It breaks my heart. I saw the movie, and in this movie, this little boy that was about the same age as my son, they had rescued him from sex trafficking. They opened the door on this van, and he's just there, so frightened. I couldn't help but think of my own son. I'm like, oh my God, I've got to be a part of the solution. Like, I can't imagine my 5-year-old son being sex trafficked.
And they're making these videos with the pornography. Yeah, I think that's helpful for people who are trapped in the pornography, is looking behind what you're looking at and understanding the truth of that, because we may, I don't know, innocently or justify what we're doing, but when you look at that truth, and it sounds like you are realizing the same things as me. When I started coaching people, what was shocking to me, it might not be that I haven't hit the sex trafficking yet. However, the amount of people who drink and use substances because they were molested as children is horrifying to me.
Yeah.
Men and women. Horrifying.
The number one characteristic that I've found with all the men, all the men that I coach, including myself, is either the father not being there or abusing the child or just kind of ignoring them. And oftentimes being molested is in there. That was not my history. But my point is, though, is that the father, like these fatherless marriages, it's like dropping a nuclear bomb. Like if somebody wanted to destroy the United States, let's just break up all, let's just have everybody get divorced and that father not being in the picture, because that father not being in the picture, surefire recipe to destroy a young boy.
Wow. Eric, you have brought up so many wonderful points and things to consider. I really appreciate you taking the time to be on this podcast. If people want help and need help, what
You can visit
how can they reach you?
you can visit my website, powerfuleric.com, to set up a meeting for me. And oh, by the way, I come bearing gifts. If someone mentions this podcast and drops me an email at eric@powerfuleric.com, I'll send them a copy of my audiobook, Everything You Know About Sex and Porn Addiction Is Wrong. And I also have another book called Think Big. It's a number one Amazon bestseller, and I'll send you a digital copy of that as well if you like. So there's Think Big, and also Everything You Know About Sex and Porn Addiction Is Wrong, 100% free. And
I would love copy, Eric.
I'd be delighted to send you copies. But I want to leave you with, some hope. There is absolutely hope that this is becoming, people are becoming more aware of sex and porn addiction. Parents are starting to be more proactive about protecting their children. They're realizing that this is a problem. That, like by listening to this podcast, you realize that, oh my gosh, probably shouldn't be giving Johnny the unfiltered phone all day, so the process is starting, healing is starting. This all is in divine order. This ultimately will lead us to our higher self, our best self. It's just these are challenges that are put before us to grow our character.
Yeah, and I do believe that when we're put through these challenges, we just become powerful, strong, and we're empowered to help others, to tell others. And I think the numbers are so big, and addiction in general, whether it's food, pornography, shopping, gambling, drinking, drugs. Like, if you start adding up the percentages, it's pretty significant. We need to get out of our heads that we're alone, because we're not alone.
Great point. You're not alone. I tell guys that are addicted to pornography that 3 of your closest male friends, I can guarantee you, at least one of them is really struggling with this, but they don't have the courage to reach out for help.
Yeah, and I say 1 in 5 that I know of in substances. So yeah. So now we're talking about 3 or 4. 5. Yeah. Anyway,
There's hope. There's hope. There's resources for help.
yeah. Thank you again, Eric. It's been a great great episode. Thanks for
My
sharing.
pleasure. Thanks for having me.